Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who's feeling disgusting and unworthy of love, which is just so terrible. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners. And in fact, had a lot of dating blindness, which we're going to talk about in our check-in topic.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I'm basically forcing Sam to attempt to be trendy with me.
Sure, yeah.
We'll explain that in a second. Anyway, this is all to say, though, Sam and I are not professionals, so please take our advice as you see fit. We are only here to shed our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love. Okay. To the trendiness. It's Monday, so we're going to do a quick check-in topic. And I've been trying to make this check-in topic work for like a month, and we're just going to do it. So there's this trend going around on TikTok. Yes, I have been looking at TikTok for 15 minutes a day.
Wow.
I know. I got over my fear of it being too loud.
Yeah, I know. That was your main complaint.
And I was like, you just turn
just turn it down, babe.
I would open it and it would yell at me, and I wasn't used to that, okay? Now I am. I'm desensitized. So there's a trend going around on TikTok that is about, it's called eyebrow blindness. Like when you or someone you know style or color in or tweeze your eyebrows in a way or a shape that is abundantly unflattering to your face, but you have no idea and you think it looks good. Like, I mean, honestly, I'm a very light eyebrowed person. I've been doing my eyebrows in a bunch of different ways over the last 10 years. And I'm confident at some point I had eyebrow blindness where I was either like over darkening them or not doing the shape right or whatever. And what's so charming about this is that somehow the internet, even though it's like rife with bullies and toxicity, somehow people are like trying to be really loving and like big sister-ish, you know, like, hey, hon, like, I think you might have eyebrow blindness, like, look into it, like, use this filter or whatever. So then people who receive these comments who often request commentary on their appearance, first of all. But so my favorite part about this trend is people finding out they have eyebrow blindness and just laughing and laughing and laughing at themselves. Because I think it would happen to me too. Like if you were like, Sierra, the way you do your eyebrows is not flattering.
You would die.
And you pointed out to me the way. Oh, I mean, I would.
Your soul would
die.
It would exit your body.
It would suck out of my body, and then it would stand over my corpse and laugh at me. So that's basically what's happening in these videos. And it's also funny because it's expanded because, like, you know, you could have blush blindness, which I definitely do. Love a rosy cheek. Definitely do it in my dimly lit bathroom so that I go out in the public and it's like, pow, pink.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so you could have, you know, hair color blindness, whatever. So I'm enjoying this trend online and I'm thinking to myself, like, how can I apply this to the podcast as I often do? And I was like, okay, well, maybe Sam and I can think of our dating history blindness, like what behavior or activities or I don't know, approaches we were taking in our dating history that we were like, yeah, this is fine. And then either somebody pointed it out to us or we went to therapy or we hosted a advice podcast for 6 years and we became aware, you know, the trance broke and we became aware that like that was not a cute behavior or not a cute eyebrow shape, if you will.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? Is it going to work? Can we make it work after a month of me trying to make it work?
I'll tell you that the only time I've ever experienced this trend on my algorithm on TikTok was I followed this like teacher who says, she's like, these are things that my students said to me today. And they're always like very specific insults or like really stupid things. Yeah. And she was like, okay, everyone's in my comments telling me I need to brush my hair, that I have like hair blindness or whatever. And then she brushed her hair and it looked terrible. And she was like, thanks everyone. It got really frizzy and like big.
You know what?
She was like, cool. Yeah, I guess I have
should
hair
say-
blindness. Thank you, people.
Yeah. I should say, ultimately, at the end of the day, we shouldn't take what people say on the internet as 100% truth. Like, if you love the way you wear blush, keep wearing that
Keep
blush.
wearing it.
You know?
Absolutely. There's no right or best
If
way.
you like your eyebrows to look like really surprised commas, I want you to do that. I want you
Same.
to keep doing that.
Absolutely.
Anyway, okay, I'll start. My relationship blindness that comes to mind when I think about like doing something and thinking it's fine, and then just like over the course of 24 hours being like, oh, that's not okay, is probably, and I've talked about this before, but like it's the way I would keep exes in my life, or like keep the door open to those exes as a means to, I thought it was like being nice. I thought it was like keeping them in my life, showing them I cared about them, not being cruel and quote cutting them off. And then as I became familiar with your preachings on the black method and why we black, or in other words, why we go no contact with people that we love, why we stop texting somebody that we ultimately love and respect but can't be with, I realized that me staying in their lives in that way was only serving me and my comfort, because I didn't want to deal with the discomfort of being, quote, the bad guy and like cutting myself out of their life, when it was actually kinder of me to say, you know what? I love you so much that I'm going to remove myself from your life. That was a huge blindness of mine for like 6 years.
It was for a long time, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that one. I'm glad that you've come along to the cult of the block.
Did you see? Yeah. Did you see me doing that and you were like, oh, she should just cut that person out? Or was it a little too convoluted from your perspective?
It was a little too convoluted.
Like, did you see me draw the eyebrows on?
I think at the beginning of that specific situation, I was like, why are they still trying to be friends? But then like once 6 years had passed or whatever, I was like, oh, maybe they are friends. And then you were like, actually, we're not. We can't do this. And I was like, oh, okay. I thought you had worked through it, but you hadn't. And that's fine.
Yeah.
You did what you needed to do.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious if you saw me do the eyebrows. Or yeah,
in the beginning, for sure.
No, I just showed up and you saw my eyebrows and you were like, okay, yeah. All right, what's yours?
I think that one of mine was confusing, like people being mean to me as them like being playfully bantering with me or like showing fun interest in me.
That
like
actually hurts.
like I really for a long time was like, oh, when people like nag me at the bar or on the dating apps like that, like I fell prey to it every time, even though I knew what it was. And like if somebody had said the same, like if you were like, hey, this person said this thing to me, I'd be like, oh my God, what a dick. Why are you attracted to this person? But for me, it was like, that was the blindness, was like, I knew what this concept was. I understood how it functioned, but I fell prey to it every time. Anytime anyone was like a little bit mean to me, I was like, who is this?
And you wanted to prove, you were
Hello.
like, I want to prove this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I'm worth being around. Yeah.
You're right. I am unworthy of your attention, but you're still giving it to me. So like I must be doing something right.
Look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, then
God.
I would go sleep with them and then it would be like, what? I would be like, why did I do that? Who is this person? All they did was just like be weird to me.
Be weird. Oh man, people are just slideshow flashing in front of my face right now. People who are weird and mean to me. And then I was like, here's my body and my emotional loyalty for the next 9 to 12 years.
Yes. It's like literally I can just see all of their faces and I can see like I can like see where I am in space with them and be like, why is this happening? Mm-hmm. But also it's hard to resist, I guess. I don't understand it, but it's hard to resist. This is kind of connected to that. I think another past eyebrow relationship
blindness I had, and we've talked about this on the show before. Someone I love once told me that the person, your soulmate, is the person that makes you feel the most. It's not the person that makes you the happiest. And so that includes like, you know, good feelings and bad feelings and whatever. And I just, you know, my young, angsty, poety fucking self was like, oh my God, yeah. Like, you make me feel so much. And I held on to that forever. You know, this idea that like it mattered. It was important that I felt a lot, that, you know, that they made me feel a lot, even if they made me feel angry. You know, well, they also made me feel loved occasionally and they made me feel wanted rarely and, you know, all these things. And I think finally listening to my body and listening to like my body at peace and at rest and how it felt when it wasn't fighting or scared or panicked or overstimulated or anxious, you know, made me realize, and like talking to my loved ones and friends like you, made me realize like I didn't feel good in so many of those relationships. The one I'm thinking of in particular, like that person didn't make me feel good. So why am I pining over him? Because what? I want another hit. I want another high from, you know, to balance out all the shitty feelings that I'm feeling. Yeah. So that blindness, gone.
Yeah, I love that one. And I think that's like the one that I was going to say was like very adjacent to that as well, where it's like the highs of like, we obviously care so much about each other because we're fighting a lot or like we're in lots of disagreement, was like a big one. And like, I think for a long time, I thought that the way that relationships were supposed to function is that like one person is supposed to like get the other person to like see it their way or like do it their way. And like so much of what I understand now is like, oh, actually, that's not actually true. And I think that like I also like projected a lot of like controlling onto the people that I was with when actually I was the one who was also like, you know, I'm not trying to like say like it was all my fault, right? But like we were both participating in a like, I want you to behave the way that I want you to, and there's no other option, right? And like now so much of what I'm realizing about relationships through my experience with like being in a healthy one is that like, oh, actually a lot of it is like letting your partner be themselves and like accommodating things that may not be exactly the way that you want them to be, but are fine, like still are okay. You know what I mean?
I know. I'm actually so glad you brought that up because I remembered another one that I thought of before we started recording, which was, it's so similar. Just the idea that like me projecting my insecurities on other people. I thought it was me being myself and letting them respond to me. But no, it was me limiting my partners, you know, like, and I really didn't realize it until I got into this stable relationship that ultimately turned into my marriage to be like, oh, I don't actually want to limit my wife's relationships or friendship or happiness or joy.
Yeah.
And therefore, I can't express my insecurities onto her in such a way in which she has to limit herself or, you know.
I will say that the only time that it's acceptable to do this is if your partner tries to turn on an overhead light. Then it's like, that's unequivocally not allowed. Like that is, do not try to do that ever. No overhead light. Peter and
I am never more entertained when I hear your hard and fast rules.
Peter and I
deal
moved
breakers
in together for the first time, and like, you know, that's always a place of like, we're figuring each other out. We're like, okay, what's a deal breaker? What's not a deal breaker? Like, where do I want to push? Where do I want to be like, okay, yeah, we can do this. And the number of times where Peter would come into the apartment and turn on the overhead light, and I would be like, what are you doing? And like turn it off and then go turn on the lamp. And he was like, what? And I was like, you just don't. We don't need overhead lights. No one looks good in overhead lighting. And we have 17 lamps that cast a beautiful soft glow onto our skin. Funny. Why are you turning on that overhead light? Luckily in our house, we don't have any overhead lights anymore. So I was like, perfect. We don't need them. We've got lamps. Okay.
We don't need this potential for conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, this is the one thing that might break us up. Just kidding, friends. I am not that awful, to be clear. All right. Let's get into today's letter. Just a content warning for this letter. It does talk about emotional abuse and threats of suicide. So today's letter comes from Babyish Gay, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing from Connecticut. Hi, Sam and Sierra. Thank you so much for reading my letter. I have been listening to this podcast since I was 16 and have been trying to save my letter for a really needy time. With that being said, this is a really fucking needy time. I'm 22 and came out as a lesbian last year after being bisexual for the majority of my life. Sadly, I was in a relationship with a man when that happened and we had to break up. I have been with 2 women. The first one was the first girl I've ever been with. Let's call her Summer, 22-year-old, she, her, cis lesbian. She did some real damage. It's actually really sad, but kind of funny at the same time. Long story short, the first time we ever had sex, she used me to cheat on her girlfriend. I had no idea. It was a one-night stand, and then about 6 months later, we reconnected and started a relationship. I didn't find out about the cheating until a year after the one-night stand at the end of our relationship. During the relationship, which is about 4 months long, she was extremely manipulative and emotionally abusive. She would treat me like her girlfriend, make love to me, and get jealous if I talked to other people. I basically lived with her the whole time. But also, she would pretend to go on dates with her friends to make me jealous, talk to other girls, as in go on real dates, and try to hide our relationship from our friends and coworkers. By the end, she had ghosted me for a month when she went on vacation while I was in the hospital with my grandmother. Not to mention, every time we'd argued, she would use some kind of past abuse to shut me up and distract me. For example, saying her dad abused her in any way. Our last argument, she said that she wanted to kill herself and told me how to end our argument. I was so depressed for months following and started therapy to help. The second girl, 25-year-old cis lesbian, she, her, was in a long-distance relationship. Let's call her Anne. At the time, she made me feel the opposite of how Summer made me feel. She was so attentive, loving, and soft, but she was in a relationship. The affair went on for 4 months before I moved away, cut it off, and told her girlfriend everything. I was so desperately in love with both of them, but at the end of the day, they chose other people, which leads me to the problem. I am so frustrated and sad with my dating life. I constantly feel disgusting and used and unworthy of love. I am so convinced that no one is ever going to fully love me, and I will forever have to settle for small pieces of people who will eventually choose other people. It's so terrifying. I am also so worried that I will never get over the trauma Summer caused, and all my relationships will be that way. Most days, I get by convincing myself that I wasn't put on earth to love or be loved. Maybe I was just put here to work and be there for my friends and family. I'm not exactly sure what I'm asking. It's just really hard for me to keep it all in. And my friends are really tired of hearing about it. Maybe just some words of wisdom and encouragement will do. Sincerely, Babyish Gay.
All right, my darling. Thank you so much for writing and trusting us with this letter. Listen, I feel for you so much. These relationships were obviously really toxic, and that has a toll on our physical and mental well-being. And I see all of the ways in which you are trying to unravel the stories that these relationships and the people in them, you know, the stories that they gave you about yourself. But Sam and I want to tell you that the stories that you inherited from those people, from these relationships, aren't necessarily true, and they are definitely not indications or prophecies for the future, or, you know, they don't tell me anything about your merits or your purpose here on earth. It's really easy for our brains, for our neural pathways, to experience something like you've experienced and take that most well-worn path to tell ourselves that we deserve this. This is our fault, and this is the worst that, you know, this is what we can expect to receive for the rest of our lives. But that's absolutely not true. You didn't deserve any of this. And Sam and I are going to be here to champion you, to build your self-esteem back up, and to recognize that this feels like a pattern to you because it's 2 out of 2 shitty relationships, right? But I want you to know that if I defined myself by my first relationships and the ways in which they harmed me and I harmed other people, I too would think I was a terrible person. But we're all put on this earth to grow and learn, to make mistakes, and to be better and get better at loving ourselves as well as loving other people. And we're going to talk about all of that and more. But first, we're going to take a very quick break.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. Yes, absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree with everything that Sierra said before the break. I think it's really easy for us to look at our relationships and see patterns that reinforce our worst fears about ourselves, right? Being into shitty relationships with people who have treated us poorly can start to tell us what we already might think, which is that we're not worthy of love, that we deserve the pain that these people have caused us, that somehow we attract these type of people, and that's the best that we can hope for. And I think that narrative kind of plays out in lots of ways, especially in some of the manifestation type of language that we often get from places like Instagram influencers or YouTube or movies, right? Where it's like you can expect to receive the energy that you put out into the world. So if you are receiving bad energy, then somehow you are putting out bad energy into the world. And I just want to name that, like, you're not inviting these people into your life by somehow being unworthy of love, right? Like, you're inviting these people into your life because you're a person seeking connection with people. And also these people are people seeking connection with people. And they might be doing it in ways that are not great and that are harmful to you. But I don't want it to come across as like you are somehow fated to meet people who are going to treat you poorly, because that's not actually what's happening, right? You've been through through a series of 2 bad relationships, which I think for anyone dating in their 20s is probably a common thing, right? Dating 2 people in a row that are that are bad. Absolutely. And I also want to name too that, like, I think for lots of queer people also who maybe have experienced dating someone who they weren't attracted to because that's who they were told that they had to date, right? Like this, like, not acting on what we know to be true about ourselves and our desires, and then starting to date people who we're actually attracted to, and who are like, it's like everything that we may have learned about how we want to process through relationships kind of just like flies out the window, because like suddenly parts of us that have never been activated before are activated, right? Like the experience that many folks might have as young cis straight people existing in cis straight relationships, where it's like, oh yes, I learned early on what this sort of magnetic, exciting feeling can feel like, is like really new to people who have recently come out, right? That idea of like, oh my God, what is this? Like, I've never experienced attraction like this. I've never experienced passion like this. I don't have rules for how I want to engage with this because I've never done it before. And then we look at ourselves and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that I didn't do that well. And it's like, yeah, because this was the first time, babe. This was like,
yes.
And again, like Sierra said, like if I judged myself by the health and quality of my first 2 relationships, I would have given up. Like, they were bad. They were terrible. Of course they were. I was a person trying to figure out who I was and what I needed and what I wanted from people. And that meant that I treated people badly. And also I allowed myself to be treated badly in ways that were not great. Right. Like, and so I want, like, this is like you're playing baseball for the first time and you didn't swing and hit the ball. And you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm just destined to be a bad baseball player. And it's like,
yeah,
no, I'm
destined to sit on the sidelines and watch people play baseball.
Absolutely. And it's like, no, you just got to get out there and you got to keep swinging, because like your first try, your first attempt isn't the attempt that defines you, right? What happens is that we actually, if we stay on the field, if we stay engaged in this, if we keep trying, then eventually we begin to learn and we begin to get better, right? Like the vulnerability of being open to failing a couple times and still deciding, I'm going to keep doing this, I'm going to keep trying. Like that is where I think we begin to create and foster meaningful relationships with people that are healthy and supportive and wonderful.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you something that I would have absolutely hated at your age.
Love it.
I still hate it at my age. And that is about cultivating a relationship with yourself. Because after you wrote this letter to us at the very end of this long letter, after you detailed the ways in which your first girlfriend was so incredibly abusive and toxic to you, and your second girlfriend kept you a secret. At the end of that, you wrote, I will forever have to settle for small pieces of people who will eventually choose other people. And I know why your brain made that connection. I know why, when looking into the face of those loves, no matter how sick and broken they were, or inadequate or unsustainable, I know why you wanted them to stay, to prove your own lovability, right? But the problem is not that they, quote, chose other people. The problem is you need to be able to choose yourself. And I hate it. I hate saying that out loud. It feels cliche. It feels like a Hallmark thing. It feels like, how do I actually apply this into my life? I'm talking about this in such a way because, like, for like a decade, I really struggled with this idea of self-love or boundaries or whatever, because it's literally all about coming back to yourself and saying, okay, what do I deserve? What do I want? What do I value? How do I want to be treated? You know? But really, I want you to stop and think, well, do I wish that I could stay in that first shitty relationship with Summer, or do I wish that I was able to leave it and say, I deserve better than you? Because that's what it is, my sweet baby gay, is that you do deserve better than Summer. You deserve better than somebody who is in another relationship. And so you have to in the same way that we get so fucking comfortable talking shit about ourselves. We get so comfortable assuming that the bad things that happen to us are because we deserve it. I need us to work equally hard at combating that and saying, I don't deserve this. I deserve better. It's so heartbreaking to me that you spent the whole letter talking about the ways in which these people hurt you. And then you say, and then they chose other people. I want to say that it's heartbreaking that you want their love still. You know what I mean? Not in a judgmental way. Like, think about the check-in topic. Like, I have wanted people who hurt me for fucking a decade, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But you are at the very beginning of a lifelong journey about having a relationship with yourself and being able to put your own peace, self-preservation, deservedness, wholeness at the forefront of all of your relationships. Because if your relationships are not serving your wholeness and your peace and your happiness, then they do not have a place in your life. And let me just paint this picture very clearly for you. The next person you meet and you're like, oh, thank God, somebody has chosen me, right? Somebody wants to love me. I'm not as unlovable as I'm afraid. And then they start treating you poorly. And then they are, as you know, they might be broken the way that many of us are broken, right? I need you to not be another bully for yourself. I need you to be able to say, I know that there's good love out there for me because I deserve love. I'm capable of love. I know that there is a better love out there for me. And I literally hate this advice because of how much I struggled with it in my 20s. And it's just so hard to actualize self-love when it's not taught to us as a culture, you know? It's not taught to us as a mental health practice when we're young. But it's true, because this is a cycle that will continue. And it's not about your unlovability. It's about your ability to love yourself and create boundaries, behaviors, relationships that support you first, because you deserve it. Love is not self-sacrifice. Love is not permitting people to treat us poorly. And I wish somebody yelled that at me, like
Probably
shook
someone
me
did,
and
and
yelled
you
that
were
in my
like,
face.
No, it's not true.
But it's about how much I feel. Yeah. And listen, I'm talking intensely because I feel intensely protective for you. And I know it's like a long road to learn how to love yourself and choose yourself first. But I want you to know you deserve it. You deserve to be loved by yourself. You deserve love from others that isn't hidden or toxic or on some sort of fucked up cycle, you know, and just because your first two relationships unfolded in this way doesn't mean that that is your life story. There's no cosmic pattern here, right? The only pattern I see is you choosing to want people who are not good to you. So that's the pattern I want you to acknowledge, not the other people. They don't deserve your time and energy. You deserve your time and energy.
For sure. Absolutely. And the pattern of defining yourself by what toxic people have decided about you, or actually have decided about their own lives that you have interpreted as being about you as well, right? Like, and you say in your letter, I get by convincing myself that I wasn't put on earth to love or be loved. And I want to tell you that you were put on earth to be loved and to love, right? And I want to just like name that because I want to remind you that you are loved deeply, right? Sierra and I don't know you, but we love you. And there are people all around you who are offering you love and affection and support. And I know that you're looking for it in a very particular way. You're looking for a romantic love and a romantic partner. And I think that that's great. I think that that's wonderful. And sometimes we can get so focused on that we lose sight of the fact that this world is full of love, and that you yourself, even as you're telling yourself, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy of any love, you are being loved by people, right? They are offering you that love. And they're not going to stop just because you say, I don't think I'm worthy of this. Why? Because they love you. And you also, friend, are deeply capable of loving, right? You are deeply capable of doing that. You were put here to love other people. It's not defined by some two toxic people treating you badly, right? Your capacity to love and be loved is not defined by them. It's defined by you. It's defined by how you want to move through the world. And no matter what you think about yourself, no matter what story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're worthy of, guess what? People are still going to love you because that is the human experience, right? Like that is what we are put on this planet to do, is to be in relationship with each other, to love each other, to find ways to recognize our interdependence and our capacity to take care of each other. And I want to just remind you of that because, again, I don't want these two toxic romantic relationships to somehow get in the way of you being able to see and feel that love. And even if you can't see and feel it, it's still there. It doesn't go away just because we're not paying attention to it. So no matter how terribly you want to talk to yourself because of these relationships, I'm going to tell you that there's still love for you and that you will always be loved no matter how unworthy you tell yourself that you are.
Absolutely. We love you so much, and we hope this helps.
Thank you so much for writing. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like access to our monthly office hours, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, as well as access to those office hours. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and music. And remember, all relationships with others start with a relationship with ourselves. That is an unavoidable truth, one that I tried to avoid all of my 20s and well into my 30s. But your relationship with others begins with how you treat yourself. Start loving, start acting kindly and curiously towards yourself. And if all else fails,
just break up.